The clock on the emergency room wall showed 11:47 p.m. when Dr. Sarah Chen first heard the screaming. After 12 years working night shifts at St. Mary's General Hospital, she thought she had heard every possible sound of human suffering. But this was different. This sound made her blood run cold. Sarah was reviewing patient charts when the screaming started. It came from the parking lot, piercing through the thick glass windows like a knife. The sound was raw, primal, and filled with a terror that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. "What the hell was that?" asked Marcus, the security guard who had been making his rounds. He was a big man, former military, but his face had gone pale. His hand instinctively moved to the radio on his belt. Before Sarah could answer, the automatic doors burst open. A woman stumbled in, her clothes torn and dirty, her eyes wide with shock. Blood streaked down her arms, but it wasn't the injuries that caught everyone's attention. It was the way she kept looking over her shoulder, as if something terrible was following her. "It's coming," she gasped, collapsing against the reception desk. "The dragon, it's coming for all of us." Sarah rushed forward, her medical training taking over. "Ma'am, you're safe now. Let me look at those wounds." But even as she spoke, she felt a chill run down her spine. There was something in the woman's eyes, something that made her believe every word. The woman grabbed Sarah's arm with surprising strength. "You don't understand. It's not like the stories. It's real, and it's angry. So very angry." Nurse Patricia Williams, who had been working the night shift for 8 years, hurried over with a wheelchair. She had seen everything from car accidents to domestic violence cases, but the terror in this woman's voice was unlike anything she had encountered. "What's your name?" Patricia asked gently, helping the woman into the wheelchair. "Emma." "Emma Rodriguez," the woman whispered. I lived on Oakwood Street. Until tonight." Dr. Chen began examining Emma's injuries. They were strange cuts, almost like claw marks, but far too large to be from any ordinary animal. The wounds were clean but deep, as if made by something incredibly sharp and powerful. "Emma, can you tell us what happened?" Sarah asked while cleaning the wounds. Emma's whole body shook. "I was walking home from my sister's house. It was a normal night, nothing special. Then, I heard this sound, like wind, but stronger. Like a hurricane was coming, but there wasn't a cloud in the sky." She paused, her breathing becoming rapid and shallow. Patricia checked her pulse, it was racing, but not from blood loss. This was pure fear. "I looked up," Emma continued, "and I saw it. Flying over the streetlights. At first, I thought it was an airplane, but airplanes don't move like that. They don't hover and circle like a predator watching its prey." Marcus had called for backup, but his radio was making strange crackling sounds. "The damn thing's not working right," he muttered, shaking it. Emma heard him and laughed bitterly. "Electronics don't work right when it's near. I found that out the hard way. My phone died the moment I tried to call 911. The streetlights started flickering, then went out completely." Dr. Chen continued working on Emma's wounds, but she found herself listening intently. "In medical school, they taught you to be skeptical of trauma patients' accounts. Shock could make people believe they saw things that weren't there. But something about Emma's story felt different. Too detailed. Too consistent. What did it look like?" Patricia asked, unable to stop herself. Emma closed her eyes, as if trying to block out the memory. "Huge. Bigger than any plane I've ever seen. Its wings were like shadows against the stars, but I could see the outline. Scales that reflected the moonlight. And its eyes." She shuddered. "Its eyes glowed like fire. When it looked at me, I felt like it could see right through to my soul." The emergency room had become unusually quiet. Even the usual background noise of machines beeping and phones ringing seemed muted. Other staff members had gathered around, drawn by Emma's story despite their professional skepticism. "It landed right in front of me," Emma went on. "The ground shook when its feet touched down. Its claws gouged marks in the concrete like it was soft clay. It was so close I could smell it, like sulfur and ancient things that should have stayed buried. Dr. Chen finished bandaging Emma's wounds and sat down beside her. Emma, I need you to think carefully. Could it have been a large bird? Maybe a crane or a heron? At night, shadows can play tricks. No. Emma's voice was sharp. I know what I saw. It spoke to me. The room fell completely silent. Even the hum of the air conditioning seemed to stop. It spoke? Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma nodded slowly. Not with words like we use. It was in my head, but I heard it as clearly as I'm hearing you now. It said it was hungry. That it had been sleeping for a long time and now it was awake. And it was angry about being disturbed. Patricia exchanged a glance with Dr. Chen. They had protocols for dealing with patients who might be experiencing delusions or psychotic breaks, but Emma showed no other signs of mental disturbance. Her speech was clear, her responses appropriate to questions, her memory of everything else perfectly intact. What happened next? Sarah asked gently. I ran, Emma said simply. I've never run so fast in my life. But it followed me, flying overhead. Every few blocks, it would swoop down and try to grab me. That's when I got these. She gestured to her bandaged arms. You said it tried to grab you? Marcus leaned forward. Its claws. They're like swords, but curved. When it missed me, they cut through a metal fence like it was paper. I kept running, ducking under bridges, staying close to buildings. For some reason, it seemed to avoid the areas with lots of lights. Dr. Chen made a note of this detail. If Emma was having delusions, they were remarkably consistent and logical. How did you get away? Patricia asked. I'm not sure I did, Emma replied, looking toward the windows. I made it here because this place is bright, lots of people. But I don't think it's gone. I think it's waiting. As if summoned by her words, all the lights in the emergency room flickered. Once, twice, then went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting eerie red shadows throughout the room. In the distance, they heard it. A sound like thunder, but rhythmic. Like giant wings beating against the air. Emma grabbed Dr. Chen's hand. It's here, she whispered. It followed me. Through the windows, they could see the parking lot lights going out one by one, as if something massive was passing over them. Car alarms began wailing, their electronic systems going haywire. Marcus reached for his radio again, but it was completely dead. Even his cell phone screen had gone black. Everyone stay calm, Dr. Chen announced, though her own voice was shaking. Patricia, get on the landline and call the police. But when Patricia picked up the phone, there was no dial tone. Just static. The sound of wings was getting closer. Dr. Chen had always prided herself on being rational, scientific. She believed in things she could see, measure, and explain. But, standing there in the red emergency lighting, listening to that impossible sound growing louder, she felt her worldview cracking. Emma stood up from the wheelchair, despite her injuries. We need to get away from the windows, she said urgently. It doesn't like to be seen clearly, but it's curious about this place. All the people, all the pain and fear, it draws it like a magnet. No one argued with her. Something primal in all their minds was screaming that Emma knew what she was talking about. They moved toward the interior of the hospital, but, as they did, they heard new sounds from outside. Car doors slamming. People shouting. Others had seen it too. Dr. Chen realized that this night would change everything. Not just for the hospital, not just for the city, but for everyone's understanding of what was possible in the world. The dragon had come to St. Mary's General Hospital, and nothing would ever be the same. As they huddled in the inner hallway, Emma looked at each of them with eyes that had seen too much. This is just the beginning, she said quietly. It's been asleep for decades, maybe longer. But something woke it up, and now it's hungry. Not just for food, for something else. Something that humans have that it wants. The sound of wings passed directly overhead, and they felt the building shake slightly. Dust fell from the ceiling tiles. Outside, they could hear more screaming. More car alarms. More people discovering that the world was stranger and more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Dr. Sarah Chen, who had spent her entire career healing people and fighting against death, realized she was about to face something that medicine had no answer for. Something ancient and powerful that saw humans as nothing more than prey. The dragon had arrived, and the longest night of their lives was just beginning. The hospital's backup generator kicked in with a low rumble that vibrated through the floors. Emergency lighting cast long shadows down the corridors as Dr. Chen led the small group deeper into the building. Behind them, they could hear more people entering the emergency room, their voices filled with panic and confusion. "We need to establish a safe zone," Dr. Chen said, trying to maintain some sense of control. Her medical training had taught her to stay calm in crisis situations, but nothing had prepared her for this. Emma limped beside them, still weak from her injuries but alert. "It won't come inside right away," she said. "I think it's testing. Learning about this place." "How can you possibly know that?" Marcus asked, though his skepticism was quickly fading as more impossible sounds echoed from outside. "When it was chasing me, it had plenty of chances to catch me," Emma explained. "But it didn't. It was playing with me, like a cat with a mouse. These creatures, they're intelligent. Probably more intelligent than us." They reached the central nurses' station on the ground floor, where other staff members were gathering. Dr. James Harrison, the senior physician on duty, looked up from a computer terminal that flickered between working and dead. "Sarah, thank God," he said. "We're getting reports from all over the city. Emergency services are overwhelmed. And our communication systems keep failing." "What kind of reports?" Dr. Chen asked, though she was afraid she already knew. "Giant flying creature, massive wingspan, electronic interference wherever it goes. 3 people have been brought in so far with injuries similar to your patient there." He nodded toward Emma. "Claw marks, but from something much larger than any known animal." Patricia had managed to gather several other nurses and orderlies. "Dr. Harrison, what do we do? We've got a hospital full of patients who can't be moved, and something out there that's..." Her sentence was cut short by a tremendous crash from somewhere above them. The ceiling tiles shook, and several fell to the floor. "It's on the roof," Emma whispered, her face pale. "It's testing the structure, seeing how strong the building is." Dr. Harrison grabbed a working radio from the security desk. "All departments, this is Dr. Harrison. We have an emergency situation. All patients who can be moved should be brought to the inner corridors away from windows. This is not a drill." As staff members rushed to follow his instructions, Dr. Chen pulled Emma aside. "You said something earlier about it being hungry for more than food. What did you mean?" Emma hesitated, then looked around at all the activity in the hospital. "Fear," she said simply. "It feeds on fear. The more afraid people are, the stronger it becomes. That's why it came here. Hospitals are full of people who are already scared, already vulnerable." "That's impossible," Dr. Chen said, but even as she spoke, she was thinking about how much stronger and more aggressive the creature seemed to be becoming as more panic spread through the building. A young orderly named David came running down the corridor. "Doctors, you need to see this. The parking lot, it's completely destroyed." Against their better judgment, they followed him to a window that faced the back of the hospital. What they saw made their blood run cold. Cars were scattered across the parking lot like toys, some flipped completely over, others crushed as if by enormous weight. Deep gouges in the asphalt formed a pattern. The creature had been walking around the hospital, circling it like a predator studying its prey. But what was worse were the people. Dozens of them stood in the parking lot, perfectly still, all facing the hospital. Their eyes reflected the emergency lighting with an unnatural glow. "What's wrong with them?" Patricia whispered. Emma moved closer to the window, her face grim. It's calling them. People who have looked directly into its eyes, they become connected to it. They're not hurt, but they're not really themselves anymore either. Dr. Harrison was staring at the motionless crowd. Mrs. Peterson from the maternity ward, that's her down there. She was supposed to go home an hour ago. More staff members gathered at the window, recognizing friends, colleagues, even some patients who had apparently walked out of their rooms to join the silent vigil outside. We need to keep people away from the windows, Dr. Chen said urgently. If Emma's right, direct eye contact with this thing is dangerous. Suddenly, the temperature in the corridor dropped noticeably. Their breath became visible in small puffs of vapor. Emergency lighting began to flicker more rapidly, casting stroboscopic shadows that made everything seem surreal. It's coming closer, Emma said. I can feel it. A sound echoed through the building unlike anything they had ever heard. It was part roar, part song, part whisper. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, resonating through the walls, the floors, even their bones. Several people in the corridor cried out in terror. Others seemed mesmerized, taking steps toward the nearest exit as if drawn by an invisible force. Nobody leaves the inner corridors. Dr. Harrison shouted. Security, help me block the exits. Marcus and 2 other security guards quickly moved to establish barriers, but some people had already begun walking toward the parking lot with the same vacant expression they had seen on the others. Dr. Chen grabbed Emma's arm. There has to be something we can do. Some way to fight this thing. Emma shook her head slowly. I don't think fighting is the answer. This creature, it's ancient. It was here long before humans built cities, before we even existed. We're in its territory now. Then, what do you suggest? Dr. Harrison demanded. We have hundreds of patients in this building who can't defend themselves. Before Emma could answer, they heard footsteps in the corridor above them. Heavy, deliberate footsteps that shouldn't have been possible. The upper floors had been evacuated. It's inside, Patricia whispered. The footsteps continued, each one causing a slight tremor in the building. They could track the creature's movement by the failing lights that marked its passage down the hallway above. Emma closed her eyes, listening intently. It's looking for something specific. Not just fear, something else. What? Dr. Chen asked. Knowledge. Memory. It's been asleep for so long, it needs to understand what the world has become. The footsteps stopped directly above them. In the sudden silence, they could hear their own heartbeats, their rapid breathing, the whispered prayers of some staff members. Then came a sound none of them had expected, gentle tapping. Like someone knocking politely on a door. The tapping came from the ceiling above the nurse's station. Regular, patient, almost courteous. It wants to communicate, Emma said, her voice filled with wonder and terror. Dr. Harrison looked at her as if she had lost her mind. Are you suggesting we answer it? I'm suggesting that maybe it's not here to destroy us. Maybe it's trying to understand us. Another series of taps, more insistent this time. Dr. Chen found herself stepping forward. Everything in her rational mind screamed that this was insane, but her instincts told her that Emma might be right. She reached up and knocked 3 times on the ceiling. The response was immediate, 3 gentle taps in return. Everyone in the corridor held their breath. Dr. Chen knocked twice. 2 taps came back. My God, Dr. Harrison whispered. It's learning. Emma moved to stand beside Dr. Chen. It's trying to understand our communication methods. Our social structures. The tapping stopped, and they heard the footsteps moving again. But, this time, they were lighter, more careful. The creature was being deliberate about not damaging the building unnecessarily. If it just wanted to hurt people, it would have done it already, Emma continued. It's powerful enough to tear this building apart, but it hasn't. A new sound echoed through the hospital, the creature's voice, but different than before. Less threatening, more like a question. It was trying to mimic human speech, though the words were unclear and distorted. "It's learning our language," Patricia said in amazement. The voice came again, clearer this time. They could almost make out words. Syllables that sounded like attempts at human communication. Dr. Chen felt a mixture of fear and scientific fascination. If this is real, if we're actually communicating with it, this changes everything we know about the world. The lights stabilized somewhat, and the temperature began to return to normal. Through the windows, they could see that some of the people in the parking lot were beginning to move normally again, looking around in confusion as if waking from a dream. "It's releasing them," Emma observed. "The connection is weakening because it's focusing on something else." On us, Dr. Chen realized. The footsteps were moving toward the stairwell. Slow, careful steps that suggested the creature was being cautious about the building structure. "What do we do when it gets down here?" Marcus asked, his hand still on his useless radio. Emma looked at each of them in turn. "We do what humans have always done when faced with something bigger and more powerful than themselves. We try to understand it, and we hope it's willing to understand us." Dr. Chen nodded slowly. She had spent her career fighting against the unknown, disease, death, suffering. But this was different. This wasn't something to be fought or cured. This was something that required a completely different approach. Everyone who doesn't need to be here should go to the upper floors, she decided. But a small group needs to stay. If this creature is truly trying to communicate, then someone needs to be here to try to communicate back. Several staff members immediately began moving toward the elevators and stairs, but Patricia, Marcus, Dr. Harrison, and a few others remained. "Are we really going to do this?" Dr. Harrison asked. "Actually try to have a conversation with a dragon?" Emma smiled grimly. "Dr. Harrison, 6 hours ago, you wouldn't have believed dragons existed at all. Sometimes the impossible becomes possible so fast that all you can do is adapt." The footsteps had reached the ground floor. They were coming down the main corridor, toward the nurse's station. Dr. Chen straightened her shoulders and took a deep breath. She had no idea what was about to happen, but she knew that this moment would be remembered for as long as humans told stories. The dragon was coming to meet them face to face. The footsteps stopped just around the corner from where they stood. In the silence that followed, Dr. Chen could hear her own heart beating so loudly she was sure the creature could hear it too. The emergency lighting flickered once more, then steadied into a warm, almost natural glow. Emma stepped forward, her wounded arms still bandaged but her posture showing a courage that surprised everyone, including herself. "It's waiting for permission," she said quietly. "It doesn't want to frighten us more than necessary." Dr. Chen found her voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. You can come forward. We won't hurt you." She realized immediately how ridiculous that sounded, 6 humans promising not to hurt a creature that could level the entire building. But, somehow, it felt like the right thing to say. The shadow appeared first, stretching down the corridor ahead of the creature itself. It was massive, far larger than any of them had imagined. When the dragon finally stepped into view, moving with surprising grace for something so enormous, the remaining staff members had to fight every instinct that screamed at them to run. The creature was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Its scales shimmered in the emergency lighting like polished metal, shifting from deep green to bronze to black as it moved. Its head was angular and intelligent, with eyes that glowed with an inner light that seemed both ancient and intensely curious. Most remarkably, it had made itself smaller. Not physically, that was impossible, but it had lowered its massive head and folded its wings tight against its body, trying to appear less threatening in the confined space of the hospital corridor. When it spoke, the voice was no longer the overwhelming roar they had heard before. It was controlled, careful, though still unlike any human voice they had ever heard. "I apologize for the fear," it said, each word carefully formed as if the creature was still learning how to shape human language. "I did not understand your fragility." Dr. Harrison gripped the edge of the nurse's station to steady himself. "It's really happening," he whispered. We're having a conversation with a dragon. The creature's head tilted slightly at the word dragon, and what might have been amusement flickered in its glowing eyes. Dragon, yes. That is one of your words for my kind. Though we prefer the old speech. It made a sound that was musical and complex, like wind through cave systems or the deep resonance of distant thunder. That is my name. But your throats cannot shape it. Emma took another step forward, surprising everyone with her boldness. What should we call you? The creature considered this question with obvious seriousness. In the time before your cities, your people called me Keeper of the Deep Fires. But that is too long for this moment. Call me Keeper. Dr. Chen found her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. How long have you been sleeping? Long, Keeper replied. Many of your generations. I went to sleep when the last of the old places were covered by your buildings. When the natural world became too small to sustain my kind. What woke you up? Patricia asked. Keeper's expression became troubled, and the temperature in the corridor dropped slightly. Pain. Fear. Suffering on a scale I had not felt before. It called to me, through the deep earth, through the roots of mountains. Dr. Chen realized what the creature was describing. The hospital. All the people who come here in pain, afraid. Yes, Keeper confirmed. Your healing place is a beacon of both suffering and hope. I felt compelled to investigate. Marcus, who had been silent since the creature appeared, finally found his courage. The people outside, the ones who were just standing there. I was learning, Keeper admitted, and there was something almost like shame in its voice. I did not realize that my attention would affect them so strongly. I have released them. They will remember only a strange dream. Emma was studying the creature's face intently. You said you're hungry for something other than food. What is it? Keeper was quiet for a long moment, as if deciding whether to trust them with the truth. Knowledge. Memory. Understanding. In the time I was sleeping, your kind has changed dramatically. Your thoughts, your emotions, your connections to each other, they are different now. Different how? Dr. Chen asked. Stronger. More complex. You have created bonds across vast distances, shared experiences that span your entire world. Before I slept, humans were isolated tribes. Now you are something new. Dr. Harrison leaned forward. You're talking about technology. Communication networks. The internet. Keeper's eyes brightened. Yes. This internet. I can sense its presence, but cannot understand its nature. It is like a vast nervous system connecting all minds. The creature paused, then continued with obvious difficulty. My kind, we were the keepers of ancient knowledge. But your knowledge now surpasses ours in many ways. I came here to learn. To understand what you have become. Emma stepped even closer to the massive creature. And what have you learned? That you are remarkable, Keeper said, and there was genuine wonder in its voice. You heal each other with machines and medicines we could never imagine. You preserve life that would have been lost in any previous age. You suffer, but you do not despair. You face death with courage and compassion. Dr. Chen felt tears welling up in her eyes. You've been watching us work. I can sense the emotions in this place. The determination of those who heal. The gratitude of those who are healed. The love of those who stay beside the dying. It is beautiful. Patricia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. We thought you were here to hurt people. Keeper's head lowered sadly. I understand why you would think so. My kind, in the old stories, were often enemies to humans. But those were different times. Different needs. We fought over territory, over resources. Now, you have claimed the entire world. Fighting would be pointless. So what happens now? Dr. Harrison asked. Do you go back to sleep? I cannot, Keeper replied. The world is too changed. Too connected. My presence will be known soon to all your people. The internet will carry word faster than I can fly. Marcus nodded. People are already posting videos online. Blurry ones, but enough to start rumors. Keeper seemed unsurprised. Then, perhaps, it is time for my kind to rejoin your world. Not as conquerors, but as partners. Emma's eyes widened. There are more of you? A few. Sleeping in deep places. Waiting for a reason to wake. If the first contact goes well, others may choose to reveal themselves. Dr. Chen felt the weight of history settling on her shoulders. You're asking us to be ambassadors. To help introduce your kind to modern humanity. You are healers, Keeper observed. Your purpose is to ease suffering, to preserve life, to bring hope. Who better to bridge two worlds? The creature straightened slightly, and they could see the full majesty of its presence. But the choice is yours. I can disappear, return to the deep places, leave humanity to its own path. Or you can trust us to help, Dr. Chen finished. Keeper nodded solemnly. The risk is enormous. For both our kinds. Your leaders might see us as threats. My kin might see humans as too dangerous to coexist with. Emma looked around at the small group of hospital staff who had witnessed this historic moment. What do you think? Are we ready for a world with dragons in it? Dr. Harrison laughed, a sound that was part hysteria and part genuine amusement. I don't think anyone could ever be ready for this. But look what we've already accomplished. A few hours ago, we were terrified. Now we're having a philosophical discussion with a mythological creature about the future of two species. Patricia nodded. If we can handle this, maybe humanity can handle anything. Marcus grinned. Besides, I've always wanted to meet a dragon. Just never thought it would be during my security shift. Dr. Chen looked directly into Keeper's glowing eyes. What do you need from us? Time. Patience. Help in understanding your modern world. And, perhaps, assistance in teaching my kin about humanity's true nature. And, in return? Keeper's expression became serious. Knowledge. Perspective. We have seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. We understand the deep patterns of the Earth itself. Perhaps, together, we can solve problems that neither of our kinds could handle alone. Emma smiled. Climate change. Disease. War. Poverty. Having a few dragons on our side might actually help with some of those. The partnership would not be easy, Keeper warned. There will be misunderstandings. Conflicts. Those who fear what they do not understand. Dr. Chen nodded. But it starts here. Tonight. With a group of hospital workers who were brave enough to talk instead of running. Yes, Keeper agreed. It starts with those who heal. As if responding to some unheard signal, the normal hospital lighting suddenly returned. The air conditioning hummed back to life. Phone systems began working again. Outside, they could hear car engines starting and people talking in normal voices. The electronic interference, Patricia observed. It's gone. I am learning to control it, Keeper explained. Your technology is delicate. But important. I will not disrupt it unnecessarily. Dr. Chen realized the dawn was beginning to break outside the windows. They had been talking for hours, though it felt like minutes. What happens when the sun comes up? She asked. Keeper turned toward the windows, where the first rays of sunlight were painting the sky pink and gold. I return to the mountains to prepare. There are others, of my kind, who must be convinced that this path is wise. And you must prepare your people for changes they cannot yet imagine. The creature began moving back down the corridor, each step careful and measured. This is not goodbye. We will meet again when both our kinds are ready. How will we find you? Emma called after the retreating figure. Keeper's voice echoed back to them, already growing distant. You will not need to find me. When the time comes, I will know. Healers, leave marks on the world. I will follow those marks back to you. They followed the creature to the emergency room entrance, where the automatic doors opened wide to accommodate its massive form. Outside, the parking lot was filled with people, hospital staff, patients, visitors, all watching in awe as the dragon prepared to take flight. Keeper paused at the entrance and looked back at Dr. Chen and her small group. Remember what you have learned tonight. Not all meetings between strangers must end in conflict. Sometimes they can end in friendship. The creature's wings spread wide, casting shadows across the parking lot. With a sound like controlled thunder, Keeper launched into the air, climbing rapidly into the brightening sky. Within moments, it was just a speck against the clouds, then, gone entirely. The crowd in the parking lot stood in stunned silence for several minutes. Then, gradually, they began to disperse, talking quietly among themselves, many looking back at the sky as if hoping for another glimpse of the impossible. Dr. Chen turned to her colleagues. So, she said, trying to process what had just happened. I guess we have some phone calls to make. Emma laughed, a sound filled with exhaustion and amazement. Who do you call to report a successful first contact with a dragon? I have no idea, Dr. Chen admitted. But, I suppose we'll figure it out. As the sun rose fully over St. Mary's General Hospital, the staff began the long process of returning to normal operations. But everyone who had been there that night knew that nothing would ever be normal again. The dragon had come, had seen what humanity had become, and had chosen partnership over conflict. Now it was up to both species to make that partnership work. Dr. Chen looked up at the clear morning sky and smiled. For the first time in her career, she was treating a condition that had no textbook, no established protocol, no clear prognosis. But, somehow, she was confident that this particular patient, the relationship between humans and dragons, was going to recover just fine. The hospital's unforgettable night was over, but the future it had created was just beginning.